Attie, thank you very much for joining me for this coffee with the editor. I'm sorry that we couldn't do it in person, but maybe one day I'll come down and visit.
Sure.
So obviously,
Welcome.
thank you. So obviously, we're going to be talking about your latest news, which I think is fantastic. But I think before we do that, if you can just give me a rundown on, or a quick overview for those who are unfamiliar, and more so for me who's unfamiliar, about 43 Air School and maybe some of your history and legacy. I believe you've been around for a long time.
43 Air School, relatively unknown in South Africa for for the reach that it does have. The history of the school started in 1940, was built as a Joint Air Forces training base by the Commonwealth in the war effort towards the Second World War. And so were a lot of other airfield or air schools at the time. 43 happened to be number 43 Air School. Number 44, for instance, was in Grahamstown, 42 in Uitenhage, and the numbers alone show you how many schools there were across South Africa. This was one of the largest schools and trained at that time pilots, bombardiers, navigators, air observers, and air crew for the war effort. And in its heydays, about 3,000 people on this base. There was a dual carriage railway line into the base. Just to give you an extent of what it was, you could take the train from 43 Air School to Cape Town, Durban, or Johannesburg if you so wished, which you can't do today, unfortunately. But that was 80 years ago. In fact, I think next month we'll be celebrating the 80th year since the Victory Day, which was somewhere in March of 1945. So that's an interesting one. But anyway, so after the war, there really was just a wind down of the school itself. And I mean, in the mid-50s, the Air Force, South African Air Force, who took over the operation of the school or the management of it, if you want to call it that, then really just became an air station, and a lot of the defunct equipment was decommissioned, and the school really became derelict. There was not much going on here. The airfield itself was used by the local population as a municipal airport, but it was never a municipal airport because it was at that stage deemed military. And then somewhere in the 60s, it really became stripped. Most of the hangars disappeared and appeared on the farms in the area around, and the runways were still in use, but there was not much activity here. In the late 80s, 88 to be exact, Jim Davis, who everybody knows at that time, came to Port Alfred, saw the potential of the school and bought the school, lock, stock and barrel from, I don't know who, it must have been government somewhere. And he then started or restarted a flight school, privately owned, 43 Air School, and at that time had about 5 or 10 aircraft. The school then grew a little bit in the next 5 or 10 years, and in 2001, I actually came down to look at the school. Part of my portfolio at that stage, I was a shareholder and director of operations of NAC, part of the Imperial Group, after I sold my business, part business, Streamline Aviation, into Imperial, and became part of NAC. We had a need for a training school and then bought 43 Air School at that time. The school was doing around about 1,100 hours a month. And it had one significant contract, which was the early stages of the SAA cadet program. So we injected a lot of capital into the school and really grew it to what it is today over time. by far the largest and busiest air school in Africa. We are rated one of the top 3 privately owned air schools globally. We have a campus. It's a full-on live-on campus, and we at the moment are at 100% capacity, about 340 full-time students at our school. We really ramped the school up at that time. We still had some contracts from African countries, and reorganized the school around about 2010 strategically to say, let us focus on becoming a airline training school so that we could train a student from selection through the ab initio phase, that area, that dark area after the most guys get their commercial or their frozen ATP license, to get ready for an airline, and they wander into that gap that they have to get their hours up. And we came up with basically a mirror copy of the EASA program, very close to what the EASA program do, where today we offer a integrated ATPL. We're the only school that can do that in Africa, and we could take a student from selection and drop him off 24 months, 23 months after he started his course. We can drop him off Airbus A320 type rated or 737-800 type rated. And that's unique. There's not many schools that can do that in one go. We started in 2013. We started our airline specific school called PTC Aviation, located in Port Elizabeth. At the time, I had 2 of the probably the most passionate and able airline captains, Keith Patterson, Wayne Westerby. They were partners in that venture at that time, and we really filled in the gap with a program that is recognized worldwide. They're called the APS MCC, which is basically the same as what is done with the airlines. Today, 43 Air School have about 50 aircraft, and we are north of 44, 45 instructors currently. At full force, we will be back to just over 50 instructors as well. We have a very structured school, very disciplined program. It's a very intense program that we offer. We also partnered with Whole Academy, so you can do an advanced aviation management course online with us. It's on our website, but if you do, for instance, the ATP subjects with us, you get credits towards your accreditation on your diploma, advanced diploma. We're hoping to get a B degree into it pretty soon as well. We're completely self-sufficient. We have our own workshops. I've got about 80 people in the engineering division. I think it's one of the biggest secrets of our school is that our aircraft Piper fleet predominantly is most probably the best maintained fleet that I've seen in my lifetime in globally. For their age, they are in an exceptional condition. We do everything: engine, interior, instrumentation, avionics, sheet metal work, and we also train up at the school, maybe not so well known. We train aircraft engineers. We offer the practical as well as the academics, which nobody else can do in South Africa. There are a lot of guys that offer either the practical or the academics, but not both. And we also train AFIS controllers. We have 10 full-time ATC AFIS controllers, which is the first step towards ATC, to run our operation. We have 5 runways, 3 parallel runways, so we can launch 40, 45 aircraft in a slot here on a daily basis and fly over 200, 250 hours a day. That's a lot of activity. There are many days, also unknown, many days where this airport of ours, Port Alfred, in terms of landings and takeoff movements, is by far the busiest airport in South Africa, if not Africa. from an activity point of view. It's a good operation. The school has really built itself a very good international name. We have many contracts with airlines, national airlines of countries. For instance, Vietnam Airlines is one of the bigger airlines in Asia, a very well-run airline. They have about 140 aircraft in their fleet, all latest 787s and so on. We train a lot of their students. At the moment, I've got about 80 Vietnamese students here. We love the Vietnamese students. They are some of our best students. Their schooling is unbelievable. They have a work ethic and a discipline that I have not seen in any other nation or culture that we've had here, including our own. On average, about 38, 40 different countries that train with us at any given time. Some larger, like India is one of our biggest clients. Indigo is very well-known, respected airline in India. Will soon be, I think 2028 will be the biggest airline in the world. They train about 800 students a year, of which we were fortunate to be selected as one of 5 suppliers. And we train about 180 a year, and they are requesting us to train more, which we can't do at the moment, unfortunately. That just gives you a scale. We've recently announced a TAAG. We signed with TAAG Angola. We're going to train, we've already been training 737 type ratings for them, for pilots, but we will now also again do ab initio for them. We used to do it a couple of years ago before COVID, and we're going to do about 100 of their students a year in total between the ab initio and the type ratings.
I'm correct in saying that ab initio is like right beginner level.
From selection, we actually help
Okay.
them with the selection of the students, yes. We have unique programs for that. We use Compass. It's a Dutch university developed program where we can select a student even before all he needs is a matric qualification, and we can do the test on them because they need a certain level of maths and science. And with that result, which is a cognitive as well as a motor skills test, we can predict exceptionally accurate whether a student will make our program or not. The program is so good that we can predict within an hour of what a student's solo hours would be, and it's very accurate. If the system gives us a certain outcome, we monitor those now through about 4,000 or 5,000 students that have gone through here since we've implemented it more than 10 years ago. And we can predict very, very well what the outcome would be with a student. Of course, there are variables like a medical and those kind of problems, but those are, less than 2%. The rest is really that stands out with 43 school is maybe the structure we have. I'll give you an example. How many of the flight schools out there have a head of training? How many have a CFI? How many have flight managers? How many have senior instructors that oversee the junior instructors? At any given stage, most of our instructors are grade 2 or higher because we develop our own instructors. We also train our own instructors. And I think that it makes a big difference to the quality of the output that we can get, which is monitored, of course, very well. Since 2014, 2013, a student comes to 43 Air School, he doesn't get any books. He walks in, the first thing he gets is an iPad. Everything is managed from the iPad, the learning management systems we have here. All his academics, his curriculum, his flight program, the safety, everything is monitored electronically. And that management information is what makes it so unique and how we can manage the operation and tightly manage something where, unlike a school or unlike a university, every student is on a different learning path and on a different place in that learning path. Just because some guys take longer to get the academics done, some guys can fly more, learn quicker, other guys take longer, they're slower, there's weather issues. So one can monitor all of those parameters individually and do individual teaching. We also match our instructors personality-wise to the students and put a lot of effort into making sure that we can expect the best outcomes of what we do.
Sure. One of my questions to you was going to be like, how do you see the future of pilot training being impacted by technology? And I think you've answered some of
Massively,
that.
massively so. Massively, much more than we would like to think. I'll give you an example. We have been ready since 2014 to do online exams, everything at the school. We are now on a big drive with the South African CAA, working with them to get us all our academics online. We don't see the reason why students should come to us for 4 months to do academics or 5 months to sit in a classroom and do academics. The technology, the ability, and the systems are there to do all of this online, including the exams. And for instance, you can write your EASA exams at 43 Air School. We do it in under the Austrian CAA, and everything is the academics, including the exams, everything is done online and very securely so. I think more securely than you can do it manually, like we currently do it, and at great cost. Students have to drive to exam centers. Our biggest advantage is also our biggest hurdle in that we are located 150 kilometers slab bang between East London and Port Elizabeth. So we are remote. It's a very remote area. You know, if you think about a student have to go and write an exam on a date, maybe once a month we get a date in Port Elizabeth for a specific subject. The CAA send all the people down to PE at great cost to them. Then everybody in the area has to drive into that center to go and write an exam. I mean, in today's world, it's ludicrous, you know, in terms of the cost and the effectivity of it. The advantage for us is that we have 6,500 square kilometers of general flying area specific to 43 Air School around us. We must probably be in the quietest part of South Africa in terms of aviation, not having those big centers around us like Johannesburg, Cape Town, or Durban, which gives us maybe more ability to train more effectively at the airports that have got those aids, like Port Elizabeth, like East London, and Bishop Airport, which is within flying distance of us for students in the advanced phase to go and do laydowns, ILS approaches, RNAV approaches. We're in the final strokes of getting the RNAV approach or the GPS let down for Port Alfred. So there's technology have changed the game on instrument flying, for instance. In the flying side, we we have got a lot of programs rolling out in terms of AI, which will help us with the monitoring of aircraft straight into the financial system, also into the safety quality side of the business, so that we can fly more effectively. As much as technology is maybe a threat to jobs, it'll actually undo the hands of management to do more strategic stuff and get more up to date with what's going on in the world in terms of changes. Because as you know, aviation is a very dynamic environment and changes. My biggest challenge at my old age is to stay with the technology that's out there. And that becomes our work. Where in the past we used to sit and do manual work that computers can do nowadays, our work now is to stay ahead of the latest technology so that you can do things more effectively. At the end of the day, I mean, we are uh, a high risk business. You know, there's 200 students a day that get airborne here, 200 potential life-threatening risks that you are managing. And the more technology you can throw at it, the better you can be at it. That is undoubtedly so, because it takes the human factor out of the equation in a lot of the senses. But things that we spend our time on is changing not what we do, hopefully more effectively. Hopefully we can teach the students better and we can better understand what our primary role is here, so that you understand the student and you can do individual teaching with a lot of the programs. You can immediately identify the weak points in a student. If a lecturer is busy with a class online, he can know exactly how many of the students are battling with certain aspects individually who they are, and then you can teach each student individually and not teach the classroom to the slower student. And I think that's going to make a massive difference to aviation training going forward,
Yeah,
where everybody can progress at their own speed.
yeah, to make a massive difference to schooling in general. Um, never mind.
Thanks to COVID.
Yes, thanks
Thanks
to
to
COVID.
COVID, who's got us all of our backsides and got more into a meeting like this. Didn't happen before COVID,
No,
you
I,
know.
I I remember when COVID happened and like I ran my own business, so everybody was like, what do we do? Where do we go? How do we do it? And thankfully, like the digital strategy had already been
Yes.
implemented. So, but it did enable this to become commonplace, which is fantastic.
And importantly, as bad as COVID was for us, I mean, it impacted aviation massively. There was many challenges for us during COVID. I mean, we locked down here with 300 students on base, and we have enough challenges as it is. We didn't need COVID to come along. But it gave us all, I think, more time to spend more time on these technologies and actually start getting into it. Whereas now, Zoom call or a Teams call is it's second nature. But beforehand, it was a new thing.
So my other question for you is like you guys when you were talking now about the number of students that you have at any given time, the partnership that you have with TAAG and Angola, it gives you an additional 100 students per annum. How does that impact your current student load, or is that factored in?
Oh, absolutely factored in. Remember, we're not like your traditional university where you have one intake a year. So we used to do 9 intakes a year, which is roughly every 6 weeks we take in an intake so that you've got the stream of pilots exiting all the time and entering all the time. So you have to carefully manage that. But I think with the online exams, once we can get that through the system, we can then go to a monthly intake because our holdup is not actually the flying management and the systems. Our holdup at the moment is because now every time you have to start a new ground school. But remember, our ground school it's for 5, 6 different courses that we do. So the investment and the amount of people that you had to have in the ground school to run the ground school was the limiting factor of what you could do because you can't put more than 30, 25 guys ideally in a classroom. So, so whereas academics was the holdup for the school, if we could get our academics to be completely flexible, we wouldn't even have intakes. We'll just keep the school 100% full every time. Put a guy on a waiting list and say, okay, you can come in 3 weeks. We'll have your opening ready for you. Our biggest limitation at the moment is really delays in visas. It's a big challenge for us. We're finding more and more so that, students apply to South Africa for visas and they can wait anything from 3 months up to 9 months just to get a visa to come and study here. And
That's hectic.
that's not good for aviation training. There's last time I looked on the CAA website, there's nearly 200 flight schools in South Africa. I mean, it's definitely a very unique ability that we still have in South Africa to have a luxury, if I want to call it that. But it's not a luxury. It's actually it could be a big economic driver for our country, in that we have the ability to do training in South Africa. There's no other country in Africa that can do that. There's very few countries in Europe that can do the volume that we do, but even to have a lot of small schools is, I think, the South African aviation business model should be protected by government because I think it is a big driver of economic activity for South Africa. It earns foreign currency. It brings students here. We are very competitive, South Africa in general, on accommodation, food. Even our labor in terms of instructors here, they don't earn what the guys earn in Europe. They don't have all the factors of, that the EU put on employment, for instance, onto companies. So it's very expensive. There's about a 35% delta in price for the same program doing it in South Africa versus Europe. And
Wow.
that's very attractive to the Eastern countries, Middle Eastern countries, Africa specifically, and then also the Far East, as we've seen. That's our market.
I just wanted to ask you before I talk about the gender diversity here. So you start in, I'm going to call them the little planes, and that's not the right terminology, so you can fix me there. How do you get the guys to the A320s and all the rest of it? Do you have simulators in there? What is that bridging process?
Okay, so yeah, absolutely. We've got, at the last count, I think we've got about 9 simulators at 43 Air School. At the bottom end is obviously the ab initio simulation that happens. A student walking out to an aeroplane here should already know what he's going to go and do. He shouldn't sit in the aeroplane and worry about radio procedures and worry about the technical side of the aircraft. Those are all things you can fix. We have one very unique simulator at 43 Air School, and it's an ATC simulator. So we put the students into the simulator before they go to the flight line so that they can understand. If you're a novice in aviation and you go and sit in the aircraft and you put a headset on, you don't understand what the people are saying, because we that maybe listen to a radio or fly often as aircrew, for you it's second nature. But for somebody who's never heard aviation terminology, when he sits in an aeroplane and he listens to the chatter that's quite fast and so on between ATC and the aircraft and so on, he's completely lost, because now his attention and focus is on what are they actually saying instead of flying the aircraft in front of him. So our simulator is very unique. We use that obviously to train the AFIS controllers that we have, the Airfield Information Service controllers, which is a first step towards ATC. And we also use that for our aircrew, especially when there's language involved. So a lot of our Vietnamese students are not that good in English when they arrive here, but because they're so diligent and hardworking, we put them in these simulators, get the language out of the way, which in their case, they work so hard that it's 2-3 months, and language is not an issue at all. So even during the academic phase, they already start catching up. So, and then I would say it's nearly maybe 30%, 32% of any program today that we do is on simulators and not in an aircraft flying. The simulators obviously differ in complexity. So when you do the instrument flying, you go to a more sophisticated generic simulator, which resembles what they fly, but it's not exact. That's what generic means. And then when they get to the instrument phases where they have to do multi-engine instrument training, then it's much closer. Where you can do some of the tests in the simulator. You don't have to do it in an aircraft. You can actually test some of the emergence and so on, of course, much better in the simulator. But then when you get to our airline stuff, then we're talking very expensive equipment, the FTD ones. What that a flight training device at level 1 is a exact copy of a Boeing or an Airbus. Everything is 100% representative. The only thing that simulator doesn't have is the physical movement, because it's not needed. The 85% of the program towards the type rating can be done in a fixed base device. And then you do the prep and the test in a full flight simulator, where the cost is exponentially more. So those simulators are nearly as much money as the whole aircraft fleet that's standing out here, so if not more. Very expensive. The license wear from Boeing and Airbus that we have to pay every 5 years, it's a seriously expensive next step into training, but we felt it was very important to move into that space so that we can now deliver to airlines a student that the first flight that he will fly, if he's done the full course with a type rating with us, first flight that he flies at his airline is maybe a sim check with SOPs and getting the SOPs done. but the first physical flight will be passengers in the back with the airplane. So he doesn't have to now go and do a whole type rating at the airline. Airlines, a lot of airlines do it, but if you think of it, that's not their business. That's not what they're supposed to be doing. The recurrency training, yes, that they have to do. But the type rating is where you're sitting with an individual that's young, inexperienced. You have to spend a lot more time on him. Now you take your most expensive resource in the airline, which is your training captains. In an airline, they should be doing the line training for the pilots that are already there, making sure that they are okay. And you're now putting them and bog them down for a month or two in a simulator with an ab initio student, which is it's not cost effective for the airline, and it's certainly a much better investment to get a student nearly ready or basically ready to fly the airplane, certified to fly the airplane. You just put your SOPs on. We can also introduce for some of the airlines like TAAG, introduce their SOP specifically into the type rating for the student. So when he gets onto the flight line, he flies exactly like they fly there on the and then every airline is a little bit different, but those are just nuances that needs to be incorporated into the training program.
Sure. I'm definitely going to have to fly down and take a spin around your facility. It sounds fascinating.
You can go onto our website, both PTC and 43, and you can do a virtual tour. You can
Okay.
even go into simulators and everything. So you're very welcome to visit, but you can have a taster beforehand and see what it's all about.
We've just come off Women's Month, so I want to know from you if you have seen an increase in women coming through your facility and what the trend has been there.
Absolutely correct. I think there's a big drive by everybody to get more women into aviation. And we certainly see that a lot more women coming through. About 23% of our students are female.
Okay.
Female make very good pilots. They listen a lot better than men do, and they follow orders a lot better. They're much more natural ability to be good procedural pilots.
Yeah, apparently it's
And
in our nature.
yeah, and they're much more pleasant to have around than men. So we don't have a problem at all finding enough women, and there's definitely a trend more and more so.
Okay.
Even in our instructors pool, we have nearly 25% of our instructors are female.
Wow.
So yeah, very
Sure.
good.
Well, Attie, thank you very much. And thank you for joining me for Coffee with the Editor. It was fantastic to learn more about your organization. And hopefully I'll see you soon.
Very good. Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity.